So coming into the start box, I had Chris Bartle, our team trainer, telling me to get my acting together, to really go for it. There was only one way to ride this course, and that was be brave, be positive, be very attacking. So it was really important to me over the first 3 fences that I got straight away into a really good rhythm and saw the forward shots not interfering too much with the horse. Winner of the Land Rover Burghley Horse Trials back in 2000. And so the first 3 went according to plan, and then I came into the arena. When I came into the arena for ABC, he's a little bit difficult, MGH Grafton Street. He can just get a little bit rude in his mouth, and I knew I couldn't interfere too much, and I just thought he was quite keen and came into the arena a bit looking around. And it was the first real accuracy fence where you had three strides between each one on a curving left-hand curve. A little bit distracted, but I had to just keep him on the line and stay very focused and be as quick as I could. Then on to fence 5AB, the Discovery Valley. You had to come quickly out of the arena, down the hill, turn to the log, and it was either a moving, committing 5 strides to the hedge, or it was a slightly quieter sit and wait for the 6. I felt for me and the horse it was really important to try and be up on the clock, so I wanted to set the tone and be brave and commit on the 5 strides, and he jumped that fence very well. Then on to 6AB, the Rolex Grand Slam Triple Brush. Tight right hand turn to a very imposing looking triple brush coming out of a ditch. It's important to have a really good turn, get on your line, keep the line, and he jumped that very well. Then on up to 7ABCD, the Holland Cooper Leaf Pit. It's very interesting because at Tattersall's in Ireland I had a really silly hiccup off a similar drop, not as big, where he just had a little silly step back on takeoff, so it was important that I just had maybe a little bit more pace than I would normally have for the leaf pit. And I think it's important to remember that because we've seen it many, many times, the leaf pit, it's really important that you had to remember that actually this is the horse's first time at Burghley. He had never seen anything like this before. So I had a little bit more pace than I wanted because of what happened in the spring. And he needed it because he put his toes over the edge and just questioned me for a minute. So I had to just encourage him off it. Then you ran down the hill and jumped to a parallel brush to a triple brush, very skinny, and he was great, stayed on his line. Then it was back to Discovery Valley just before that, ABCD, and I was sort of pretty much up on my minute marker, maybe 2-3 seconds down, and that was your 3-minute mark. There again you came back into all the people. You had big parallel turning 4 strides to a very wide left-handed corner. Luckily it helped the way that Mark Phillips had designed it, because you were given the lay of the land that you could run along the edge of the lip of the hill to give you your line to the corner. He was great at that fence, really chuffed. Then it was a case of getting into the rhythm, remembering to breathe, keeping the pace up, going up the hill to the flight hanger, which was a big imposing grey fence with quite a big drop, so it was important not to just see a flyer. I had to just slightly take my foot off the gas and see a little bit of a deeper shot to it so that he didn't over jump, and again he was good there. Then it was run down the hill, still thinking the clock. 4 minutes was probably I was about 5 seconds down at 4 minutes, and you had to let them run down the hill and let the pace carry you up the hill to the serious complex of the Trout Hatchery at 10 ABCD and 11 AB, and that all came up so quickly. You had a tight turn to a very wide parallel perched on the top of the hill with a big drop and then the water behind it, so it was important to have a good shot at that parallel, and the back rail had a frangible, so it was important you had a good jump so you cleared the pin. I fortunately had a good turn, got that jumped, but then I thought it might come up a bit quick, the parallel, so I stayed a little bit on the outside line to get the 5 strides, and it ended up I actually was a bit far off the middle oxer, which was in the water, so he really had to reach a bit for that, but I felt he tried really hard. And because he reached, I then thought, I've got to put my leg on him and be quick because everything comes up so quick. And nearly, I think, I didn't quite give him enough time to jump back into the Trout Hatchery well. And he just slightly caught it a little bit behind, which slightly made him peck on the landing. And I just didn't quite get the line I wanted out of the Trout Hatchery to then have a good smooth turn to the last element. So that all got a bit quick, messy, a bit ugly. And I just sort of rode it off the seat of my pants, really. And yes, it was ugly, but boy, he was a good boy, because it was a big question for a horse where he is in his experience. So it's so important to me after that to have a really, really good jump over the big Trakehner at fence 12, because that was the one let-up fence where, yes, it was a huge ditch, but it was important to give it and treat it as a let-up fence and see a good forward shot and instill the sort of confidence and reward him. And he was great there, and I really made a big thing of patting him and saying, good boy, this is what we want, and it's all fun here. It's not so big and scary. And then up to the maltings at fences 13, A, B, C and D, the massive great white oxes, which are huge, and you had to go around the back of the house, and again, so important to keep the impulsion. And I was aware that some people maybe hadn't quite attacked it enough, and the pin was going on the back rail, so it was really important I had a good shot at those 2 parallels. And with Squirrel, he's had a couple of hiccups turning left to a big right-handed corner, and so I was aware that was one fence that I really had to keep the level of concentration up. Fortunately, I had a great shot over the first oxer, white oxer, a good turn to the second, a good shot over the second, and then I just had to really work to keep him on the line to the last corner, and luckily I got control of the shoulder. He did slightly drift to the left with it, but it was good. Huge relief, massive pats, and massive relief when I got through that combination. But obviously you can't think relief because you're on to the next question, which was the Rolex combination at 14, A, B, C and D. Right from when I walked the course the first time, for me personally, I didn't like the left-hand route. It was the quicker route, the left-hand route, but I felt there was so little in it time-wise between the left and the right, and I just felt it was one place that we'd had so many big jumping fences. It was one fence that if you went to the right, it was a bit more of a gymnastic exercise where the horses didn't have to reach and use their scope so much. They had to be a bit athletic and nimble because they popped over the left-handed corner, turning to the ditch, bounce over the rail, then turning right to another corner. And so it was a good place in the course to just put them back on their feet. Big pats, 6 minutes, bit down on the clock, but within reason. I knew at the end of the course you could make up, so I was pushing all the time. Then it was up to the Horsesport Island flyover, which was built, a spectacular looking fence that looked very imposing, where you went up over the bridge and had a big brush into space, and the horses, they really put their trust in you and you put their trust in them, and it was a fabulous jump. It gave a really good feel, and I had a lovely feel there. And then you ran down the hill to the Land Rover at the lake, which was 16A and B, which to me was one of the ugliest fences on the course, because it was at a time when you'd really opened them up. You ran down the hill, and he would be one that would get a little bit on his front end in his balance, and it was 2 vertical white gates on a very acute angle, and you had to get your line right, you had to get the balance right, you had to see your stride, and so I was relieved I did, and he jumped it well. Then straight up Winners Avenue, a long pull up the hill, and you know that's the towering point of the course because it's a long pull, and there's a jump halfway up Winners Avenue, which was a big wide spread but sort of grass topped, and I actually if I'm honest, I got a little bit, went to my hand, I maybe did a bit too much, I interfered, which annoyed me, and actually he did put his back feet on the grass, banked it behind, but again sat still, patted him, apologised to him because I just felt I interfered a bit too much. Then 8 minutes, little bit down, but not too far down. I think probably maybe 10-15 seconds down at 8 minutes, which is just before the Cotmore Leap, the massive great ditch, which I never ever walked up to. Won't let myself look in the ditch, so I think if I don't know how wide the ditch is, the horses aren't going to know. So I just luckily, relief, had a good stride there, he was great. Turning then right-handed at the far end of the course, then we had the keeper's brushes, which was a very tall brush with a little bit of an undulating landing up 4 strides to an arrowhead, where I felt that was the one place in the course that he just felt a bit, oh mum, I need a little bit of a breather, so I had to help him through that and support him a bit through that, and I think I might have had 5 strides because he landed a bit short, so I was just quick, rather than chase him to get up on the 4, I actually felt, because he felt a little bit tired there, I actually thought it was better rather than chase to actually just sit quiet, and I think I had an extra stride. Then I didn't push him down to the dairy mound because I know the dairy mound was, I think it was called Clarence Court at fence 20. I knew it was a big ask of scope and there was a lot of big jumping efforts there, so it was important that I gave him from the fence before time to just take a big breath, give him time to just get some oxygen in, so I didn't push him there. I wanted him to, breathe, so I had a bit of fuel in the tank to then jump through that combination, and I thought he was absolutely brilliant there. And then from there it was running downhill to home, where we had the Pardubici, big fence running downhill, and again I just remember Chris Bartle saying, just keep your hands down, keep the neck out in front of you, sit back, and I had a great shot there. And then same thing down to the slate mine at 22, run down the hill, and that's where with a horse like him I would end up going to my ham because he would run a little bit on his head, and I was actually thought I mustn't look at the fence, because if I look at the fence too early I'll start hooking and pulling and interfering with him, so I tried not to focus too soon on the fence, and luckily the stride was great and he flew that, it was great. And again then it was to 23AB, the anniversary splash, and he was fabulous there, great. I was on the way home, but still having to say, I'm nearly home, but let's concentrate. And I made up on time. I sort of was up, but I wasn't up on the clock, but I had pulled back a few seconds, which was positive. Then it was the Lion Bridge 24-25, had a good jump at the top there, and then to my shock and horror, poor boy, as I was sort of flying through the water, he stumbled and went right down on his nose, so it was a really horrible moment, where that was probably one of the scariest moments on the course, but obviously there wasn't a jump involved, but bless him, he had a little cut on his lip because he went so far down, stumbled, but picked herself up, and it just shows you can't sort of lose focus anywhere, because I could have been very easy over his head. And then picked him up, covered in water, we both got wet, to jump out over 25, and then it was just foot down on the gas to home, and he jumped, the feeling, he jumped the last 2 fences great, and the feeling coming through that finish was just unreal, real pride. And
through there, season clear as the book turns over to the ball, and MGH Grafton Street to stop the clock 10 seconds over the time, 26.8.
Special.